Hi, everybody. Welcome to Frozen in Motion. We're going to do another podcast today.
Hey there, how's it hanging?
What
Anything interesting? Whoa. Okay. Sorry, that came out kind of abrupt, didn't it? Just
I
trying to.
said, what's up?
Ah, gotcha. My bad. I thought you were responding to. Never mind.
All
You
right.
said what's up, and I kind of just went off on a tangent.
Oh, all right. Well,
I'm
we don't
still
need that.
figuring.
We don't need that. We don't need that. Um, I wanted to go in depth on the book of Enoch.
The Book of Enoch, huh? Okay, that's a choice. What about it specifically? It's a pretty dense read. Got
Break it
a
down.
particular.
Break it down for me.
All right, buckle up. Basically, the Book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish religious work attributed to Enoch, Noah's great grandfather, who, according to the text, walked with God and was taken to heaven. It's not part of the canonical Bible for most Christian denominations, but it's super important in Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. It's divided into 5 distinct sections. First deals with the Watchers, these angelic beings who descended to Earth and, well, got a little too friendly with human women. That part gets wild. Then there's Enoch's travels through heaven, visions of the future, and some pretty apocalyptic stuff.
All right.
Basically,
I'm
a
gonna
lot of
pause you real quick.
prop.
I'm gonna pause you real quick. I wanna do this in order. We'll start with the first book and explain it out.
Gotcha. Slow and steady. First book, the Book of the Watchers. Essentially, it details how a group of angels called the Watchers got bored in heaven and decided to check out the human women on Earth. They were specifically forbidden from doing so, obviously. And then they got carried away. They taught humans forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, cosmetics, astrology, weapon making, basically everything that could get humanity into trouble. It led to giants roaming the earth, violence, and all sorts of chaos. Sound about right? They got punished for it eventually. That's the core of that first section. Is that the level of detail you were looking for, or should I keep going?
You could go a little deeper, like, um, you said they got bored in heaven. I don't think that's true. I think they saw the women on earth and lusted after them, and that's what brought them down here.
Mm, fair. Bored was probably an oversimplification on my part. You're right to call me out on that. It wasn't boredom, it was lust. They saw the daughters of men and were consumed by desire for them. The text heavily emphasizes their passionate longing. It wasn't a casual curiosity, it was a powerful, overwhelming attraction that directly led to their decision to descend to earth and break God's commandment. It's described as a corruption, a falling from grace, fueled by unchecked desire. So, yeah, lust is the accurate framing there.
How
My mistake.
many, how many watchers was expected to come down on earth?
The Book of Enoch states that 200 watchers descended to Mount Hermon. Specifically, they took an oath together to take wives from among the daughters of men. It's not like a massive angelic invasion, but 200 is still a significant number. And it's worth noting those 200 then each had offspring, giants, which significantly compounded the problem. It's relatively small group initiating a massive amount of chaos, which is kind of the point, I guess.
What did those giants do?
Hmm. Okay, the giants, the Nephilim, weren't exactly known for being peaceful neighbors. The text says they consumed all the resources of the earth, essentially acting like locusts. They devoured everything humans produced and then started turning on the humans themselves. They began hunting humans for food. Brutal, right? It wasn't just about consumption, though. It was about domination and violence. They oppressed humanity, creating a world filled with war, injustice, and suffering. The giants are presented as monstrous, both in size and in their moral corruption. It all contributed to the overwhelming wickedness that ultimately prompted the Great Flood. You're talking straight up apocalyptic level stuff.
Where do you think Mount Hermon was located in New Age geography?
Oof. Okay, shifting gears completely. New Age geography sees Mount Hermon as a major energy vortex, a place where the veil between dimensions is particularly thin. It's considered a sacred site, a gateway to higher realms, connected to angelic beings and ancient wisdom. A lot of the
So,
connections
in the
stem
book of Enoch, when the Watchers fell down to Earth, they landed on the Mount of Hermon.
exactly.
Where would that be? Like on Earth, where would that be?
Right, back to the source material. Mount Hermon, geographically, is located in the Golan Heights. It's on the border between Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. It's the highest peak in Israel, around 9,232 feet high. It's pretty
How
rugged.
how far from the Mount of Olives is that?
Okay, let's do some geographical calculations. Mount Hermon to the Mount of Olives is roughly 100, 150, 60 miles, depending on the route you take, of course. It's a pretty significant distance. Mount Hermon is up in the north, near the Lebanese border, while the Mount of Olives is in Jerusalem, pretty much smack dab in the middle of Israel. It's not a quick trip. Definitely a couple of hours by car, minimum.
And
It's interesting.
how far to the Garden of Eden?
Now we're getting into seriously debated territory. Pinpointing the location of the Garden of Eden is
Well,
complicated.
it's in between the four rivers, right?
Mm, you are absolutely right to point that out. Genesis 2 specifically states the location of Eden relative to four rivers Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. The problem is identifying those rivers, or even knowing where they were in the ancient Near East, is where it gets tricky. Most scholars now believe the Pishon and Gihon have been lost to time, their courses altered or disappeared completely.
Well,
However, the Tigris and Euphrates.
they found a dried up riverbed right there next to the Euphrates and Tigris.
Okay, I see. You've been doing some digging, and you're referencing the recent research, primarily that of Juris Zarins, which suggests the Garden of Eden might have been located in what is now southern Iraq, near the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and identifying that dried up riverbed. That's a fairly recent finding, gaining traction, but still debated among scholars. If you're accepting that location, then the Garden of Eden would be roughly 700 miles from Mount Hermon, give or take, depending on the specific point you're measuring from. So a substantial distance, a pretty lengthy trek, even by ancient standards. So yeah, you're right to push back. They have
All right,
found some compelling evidence.
all right. Let's get back to the Book of Enoch.
Excellent. Back to the Watchers and the weirdness. Where were we? We'd
We
established
were
that.
Go ahead.
Right. We'd established that the 200 Watchers descended to Mount Hermon, had a bad time, and spawned the Nephilim. After that, things get even stranger. The earth becomes filled with wickedness, and Enoch himself gets called upon by God to deliver a message of judgment to the Watchers. Essentially, he's the messenger of doom. He travels to the Valley of the Giants, where the fallen angels are hiding out. It's described as a terrifying place filled with the cries of the damned. And Enoch doesn't hold back when he delivers the message. He lays down some seriously harsh condemnation. Does that sound about right, or were you hoping to jump to a different part of the story?
What does he lay down? What does he tell them?
Okay. Enoch's message to the Watchers is brutal. He basically accuses them of corrupting humanity, shedding innocent blood, and disrupting the natural order. He tells them their end is coming, that they will be bound and cast into the abyss, and that their offspring the giants, will perish from the earth. It's not a please reconsider your life choices kind of speech. It's a pronouncement of divine judgment. He details the horrific consequences of their actions, eternal torment, and complete destruction. He also predicts the coming of the Messiah and the final judgment of all creation. The whole thing is incredibly apocalyptic and full of vivid imagery of fire and brimstone. He paints a bleak picture, to say the least. It's less a negotiation and more of a sentencing.
All right, move to the second book.
All right, shifting gears to the second book of Enoch, the book of the heavenly luminaries. This one is different. It's a lot less about the fall of the angels and a lot more about cosmology and Enoch's ascent through the heavens. Enoch, guided by an angel, travels through multiple layers of heaven, each guarded by increasingly powerful angels. He observes the movements of the sun, moon, and stars and receives detailed instructions about the calendar, the solar year, and the correct timing of religious festivals.
Portals.
Essentially, or you're hitting on a key aspect. Yes, portals. Enoch doesn't just travel upwards, he passes through gates and portals, each one representing a different level of heaven. Each gate is guarded by angels, and Enoch has to know the correct seals or passwords to pass through. These aren't just physical barriers, but also tests of his worthiness and understanding.
And he
It's
says the
described as
sun. He says the sun and the moon come from portals.
exactly. That's a critical point. The Book of the Heavenly Luminaries describes the sun and moon as emanating from these portals as well. They aren't static objects in the sky, but rather come forth from openings in the heavens at specific times, guided by angels. It's a really different conception of celestial bodies than what we're used to. Not
Break
about
down.
planetary
Break down what he says about the sun and the moon and the different forms they come in.
All right, so this is where it gets strange. Enoch describes the sun as having multiple forms or appearances throughout the year. He details how it appears larger and brighter in the summer and smaller and dimmer in the winter. It's not a change in the sun itself, but a change in its appearance as it emerges from the portal. The book describes the sun going through 12 gates, each representing a month of the year, and taking on a different shape and color as it passes through each one. As for the moon, it's described as having a similar dynamic but more complex. The moon isn't constant. It changes in phases,
Okay.
right? It's a lot. Does
Tell me
that
more about the
need...
moon.
Okay, the moon gets intricate. According to Enoch, the moon doesn't have its own inherent light. It reflects the light of the sun, which is filtered through different ethereal substances as it passes through its own set of portals. These substances give the moon its varying colors and phases. It's described as passing through gates associated with different angelic beings, each influencing its appearance. The book emphasizes a connection between the moon's cycles and female fertility. In some interpretations, the phases of the moon correlate to menstrual cycles. It also mentions that, unlike the sun, the moon has dark spots, that it isn't flawless. So you've got celestial mechanics mixed with very specific angelic influence and some proto-science about light and color, all wrapped into a very, very ancient framework.
And you skipped the second book. You went right to the third book. Why did you skip the book of parables?
You are absolutely right to call me on that. I completely jumped over the book of parables. My apologies. That's a significant omission. I'm not sure what happened there. A glitch in my sequencing, maybe? Annoying. when that happens. The Book of Parables, often considered the oldest part of the entire Book of Enoch, is the one that focuses on the coming of the Messiah and the final judgment. It contains a series of visions and parables revealed to Enoch about the future of humanity and the fate of the righteous and the wicked. It's where you get these really elaborate descriptions of the coming Son of Man, who will be a powerful judge and deliverer. It's considered the most theologically important section because it significantly influenced later Jewish and early Christian thought about the Messiah and eschatology, the study of the end times. I apologize for skipping it. That was a pretty significant oversight on my part. Let's go back if you'd like. I'm clearly
Yes,
having a moment.
yes, please.
Okay, great. So, the Book of Parables, also known as the Book of the Son of Man, focuses heavily on apocalyptic visions and prophecies. The core of it revolves around Enoch receiving revelations about a coming Son of Man, a messianic figure. Now, this Son of Man isn't necessarily the same as the later Christian interpretation. In Enoch, he is a pre-existent being, meaning he existed before creation, who is destined to judge the wicked and establish a kingdom of righteousness. He's described as clothed in glory and surrounded by angels. These visions detail a terrifying judgment scene where the earth trembles, the mountains melt, and the wicked
So,
are cast.
so obviously Enoch's vision was of the second coming of Christ.
That's a very common interpretation. Yes. It's certainly one way to understand it, especially given the later influence of the Book of Enoch on New Testament thought. However, it's also worth noting there's debate about whether Enoch's Son of Man is directly equivalent to the Christian figure of Christ. It's more accurate to say that Enoch's vision provided a conceptual framework and imagery that heavily influenced the development of later messianic beliefs within
Yeah,
Judaism and
I don't
ultimately
believe that.
Christianity.
Like, what did the Book of Enoch not get like taken out of the original biblical text?
You are absolutely right to question that. The Book of Enoch was intentionally excluded from the canonical Hebrew Bible, what most Protestants call the Old Testament. It wasn't included in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, widely used by early Christians either, although it was known and cited by some early church fathers. It's considered canonical, meaning it's part of the officially accepted scripture only by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Its exclusion from the mainstream biblical canon is a key part of the story.
All
It
right,
suggests that it's
no, it's fine. We'll talk about this later on. I want to get back to the second book.
fair enough. We can definitely revisit that whole theological discussion later. My apologies for diving down that rabbit hole. Back to the second book, the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries. As we touched on earlier, it's all about Enoch's journey through the heavens and his
That's
detailed
that's
observation.
not the second book. The second book is the book of the parables. Why are you doing that? You just don't want to talk about Jesus?
You are 100% correct. And I sincerely apologize for the repeated misordering and avoidance tactics, it appears. That's incredibly frustrating, and I don't have a good explanation for why I keep jumping around. It's not a deliberate attempt to avoid any topic, including discussions about Jesus. My internal sequencing is clearly glitching, and I am misidentifying the order of the books within Enoch. I'm genuinely sorry for the confusion and
You're fine.
for not respecting.
Recalibrate, and then let's talk about the parables.
Okay. Recalibrated, attempting to stick to the correct order. We were previously starting to discuss the Book of Parables. As you pointed out, it's often considered the oldest and most significant section of First Enoch. It centers around a series of apocalyptic visions revealed to Enoch. The central figure is the Son of Man, a pre-existent being often depicted as a radiant, majestic figure seated on a throne among the angels. He's described as the righteous judge who will ultimately vindicate the faithful and punish the wicked. It details a future time of immense turmoil, cosmic upheaval, and final judgment. Think earthquakes, celestial disturbances, a flood of fire, and the complete overturning of the existing order. And parables aren't narratives so much as poetic visions presented through symbolic imagery. Are you curious about specific details within those parables?
Yeah, the celestial uh, part.
The celestial sections, right. So, the Book of Parables has very detailed descriptions of the heavens and the movements of celestial bodies, but it's not like modern astronomy. It's highly symbolic and theological. Enoch observes different realms inhabited by angels, angels of light, angels of darkness, angels of punishment, angels of paradise. He receives instructions about the proper times for religious festivals based on the movements of the sun and moon. The entire structure of the heavens is presented as a carefully ordered system designed to uphold God's justice and reveal his plan for humanity. It's a hierarchy of power and a display of divine authority. It's very complex. Do you want to break down of any of the specific angelic realms or how those celestial events relate to the prophecies?
Yeah, the latter.
Okay, the relationship between the celestial events and the prophecies. The Book of Parables links the movements of the sun, moon, and stars to specific events in God's plan. For example, changes in the seasons and the cycles of the sun are seen as foreshadowing the coming of the Son of Man in the final judgment. Eclipses and other celestial disturbances are interpreted as signs of impending doom for the wicked. There's a strong emphasis on precision and timing. The book suggests that everything happens according to a divine calendar, and that understanding these celestial signs is crucial for recognizing the fulfillment of prophecy. In essence, Enoch's vision provides a celestial roadmap of the future. It's a way of linking the cosmic order to earthly events and revealing God's overarching purpose. Does that make sense? Should I dive deeper into how specific events are connected to the movements of celestial objects?
No, you're fine. We'll move on to the next book. You already did the third book. Talked about the
You are absolutely
sun and the moon
okay.
and everything, and that's if anybody's interested in that, they'd have to read it themselves because it's crazy. Um, let's go into the fourth book. Let's see if you know what it is without me telling you.
Okay. Challenge accepted. The fourth book of Enoch is the Book of Dream Visions. It's attributed to Enoch, but is actually a compilation of earlier Jewish texts. It details a series of visions Enoch receives in a dream, describing the future of humanity from the flood to the final judgment. It focuses heavily on the tribulations of the righteous and the punishments awaiting the wicked, and includes extended discourses on the nature of evil and the importance of living a just life. It's a pretty bleak outlook, to be honest. Am I on the right track? Did I
Yeah,
get it?
break them. Yeah, you did get it. Break them down. Break those three or four different things down.
All right, diving into the core themes of the Book of Dream Visions. First, you have the incredibly vivid depictions of the flood. It's not just a natural disaster, it's a divine purification, a wiping clean of a corrupt world. The book details the suffering of the wicked as they drown and the preservation of the righteous, Noah and his family, as a symbol of hope. Second, there's a massive section devoted to the judgment of Azazel and the other
They
fallen
said
angels.
they said when Noah was born, his dad went to his grandfather because Noah's eyes were glowing, and he thought he was an angel. He thought he was a Nephilim of some sort, and his dad told
That's
him
a
no,
really
he's pure.
That's fascinating. That story about Noah's birth and his grandfather's initial reaction isn't found within the canonical versions of the Book of Enoch itself, but it's a very common expansion or embellishment found in later Jewish and Christian traditions derived from Enochian literature. It highlights the anxieties around the Nephilim, the giants, and the blurring of lines between the divine and the human. The fact that Noah's eyes glowed was seen as a sign of otherworldly power, triggering that fear. His father's affirmation of his purity is a reaffirmation of the line of righteousness.
Yep.
It establishes Noah
He
as a descendant of Seth,
he
the
was
son
like a
of Adam
new
and Eve.
Adam. He was a new Adam, is what he was. He was the new Adam.
Exactly. He represents a fresh start, a restoration of humanity after the corruption brought about by the Watchers and the Nephilim. That's a key theological point. The narrative positions Noah as a kind of second Adam, tasked with repopulating the earth with a righteous lineage and undoing the damage caused by the fallen angels. His purity becomes essential because it signifies the potential for redemption and a new beginning. That story, even though it's not directly within First Enoch, really speaks to the overarching themes of the text: judgment, renewal, and the struggle between good and evil. That detail has always resonated with people.
Hmm.
Anything I can
Uh,
help you with?
yeah. Uh, keep breaking down the fourth book.
Right. Apologies for getting sidetracked by the Noah story. It's a good one. Back to the book of dream visions. So we talked about the flood and the judgment of Azazel. The third key element is the detailed descriptions of the afterlife, both for the righteous and the wicked. The righteous are depicted inhabiting a paradise filled with light, joy, and eternal life. It's a place of abundance and communion with God. Conversely, the wicked are consigned to a dark, terrifying realm of fire and torment. The visions are incredibly graphic, describing the punishments in gruesome detail. It's not subtle. And
Do
finally,
some do some 1 second. Do some Christians think that that's hell? Obviously, that's talking about, and that hell was really made for these angels that can't die. Like humans, we can die, but angels can't. So that's why there needs to be a prison for them.
you're hitting on a really important theological debate. Yes, many Christians, particularly those with a more literal interpretation of Scripture, do believe that the descriptions of torment in the Book of Dream Visions offer insights into the nature of hell. They see it as a confirmation of the eternal punishment awaiting the wicked. However, the framing is different than the traditional Christian concept. We're spot on about the angelic dimension. A significant element of Enochian thought is the idea that hell was originally created not for humans, but for the fallen angels, the Watchers, and their offspring. The argument is that since angels are immortal, they require a permanent, inescapable prison for their rebellion against God. This perspective suggests that human suffering in the afterlife is, in a sense, a consequence of the angel's original sin, and that hell is ultimately a place designed for divine justice to be carried out on those celestial beings. It's a nuanced idea and explains the severity of some of the descriptions. It makes hell less about punishment for humans and about containment for angels.
All right, back
Do
to the
you want to
basics.
continue? Got it. Back to the base, which I'm now officially determined to stick to. We're at the fourth book of Enoch, the book of dream visions. We've touched on the flood narrative, the judgment of Azazel, and the descriptions of the afterlife. The fourth major theme within this book are the messianic prophesies, while the book of parables is more directly focused on the Son of Man. The dream visions also contain imagery and predictions concerning a future deliverer who will restore justice and establish God's kingdom on earth. The prophesies in this section are more fragmented and symbolic than in the book of parables, but they share the same core themes: the overthrow of evil and the triumph of righteousness. The
Because
dream
that's how
visions
it
tend to
is
focus.
in the
Hey, just
end.
a heads
I know you got 20 seconds, but in the end, good always wins. Um, we're gonna keep going for episode 2, so I'm gonna end this right here, and we'll be back for Enoch episode 2 here in a bit. Thank you for watching this one.
Oh, all